Yo, today's topic is about whether or not perception always can see only one thing at a time. And to like explain where this comes from, so I am predisposed to schizophrenia, and even though I do not have schizophrenia, it means that I have some qualities that are not inherently schizophrenic that are similar to it. That's what I'm going to explain might seem as if I'm crazy, even though I'm not. So I have this thing where, you know how people daydream? I also daydream, but it's next level to me. Like everything in front of me disappears, and I'm fully immersed in the experience, and I can see and imagine things very vividly, and it's like describes the process of my thinking, and I'm just completely not here, right? It's a normal thing for autists, but from the experts that I talked about, and when I read, it's like a sign that you're predisposed to schizophrenia, but you don't actually have it. So that's it. So back to the topic. And I was just sitting here like 10 minutes ago, and I was like seeing this like scene where in 20, 30 years later, I have a daughter, and she's like little, and you know how children, they ask like, these questions to their parents or just to adults that adults are incapable of answering because of how basic and how quote unquote obvious those things are. And so the question my daughter asks is, why can I only see things from one perspective? And I would be like, well, even though you can actually see things from perspective, you can actually walk around and look at certain topic from different perspectives. And then even though at a time you look from one place, you look at all these places post facto. But then she would go like something like, no, but I want to see everything now. And at the same time, why can't I see more? And I'm like, that's interesting. Because if you actually think about it, like if you think about AI, even AI cannot see everything at the same time because it has some context in its mind. You know, like the paperclip paradox, where the AI goes rogue and completely takes control over the whole planet and just destroys worlds just to make more paperclips. It still does everything from one perspective, even if it can observe everyone at the same time. And so I'm like, okay, would it then mean that everything that is adjacent to consciousness, or at least has some sort of computational power, is limited to a singular point of perception? But then I would like counter argument myself. Wait, no, there's actually God. And if you think about it, God is omnipotent. Like he knows everything. But wait, wouldn't it mean that if God knows everything, he still looks at everything from one perspective? Because there's only one perspective to be had, which is the omnipotent one, where you look at everything from one perspective. And then I would be like, okay, and I would tell it to my daughter, okay, so the problem then is that you have very limited amount of memory that you would otherwise run into if you were to perceive more. And then it clicks. It clicked to me that, like in my mind, rules are split into primary rules and into secondary rules. And to elaborate what I mean, that primary rules are rules that exist like at the very basis by nature of our world and things. And it doesn't have to be like in our world, it can be in like microsystems of like of human origin, but whatever. And there's secondary rules that do not necessarily exist on their own, but rather exist as adaptations to the existence of primary rules. Let's make an example. Let's say that time and space is like a primary rule, and okay, not wait, what was I even thinking about? Oh, right. Let's say time space is a primary rule, and then our perception of time and space based on memory is a secondary rule. It didn't necessarily exist because I wouldn't say that comets can remember something, like whether it's like time or like where they are or like any data about themselves. Like they can remember, right? But at the same time, you're like, okay, this is a secondary rule because it didn't exist, even though it actually exists now as an adaptation to the primary one. And I'm thinking, what if us being able to perceive things only from one perspective is like a secondary type of rule that comes out of requirement for memory to perceive things. And if you have memory, it means you're limited. If you're limited, you need to limit your, reception of information. And then what would be the primary rule that causes there to be memory? And I don't know, to be honest. Like, my only theory that came to my mind would be that the world is so big compared to what one person or like creature can be, that instead of trying to like bite more than one can chew, nature went like, okay, I need to limit those like creatures so that they don't go crazy and they'll just like, die. And it kind of makes sense, but then you just come back to God. Why would God both follow and not follow this like scheme, this system? And then it clicks for me. Oh my God, I was humanizing the God all this time. I was perceiving him as if he was a human, even though I clearly know that it's not a human, because human or a humanified version of anyone is inherently limited, and the concept of God, which is nature, inherently like implies that it's unlimited. So my own counter argument that would stop me from telling my daughter that the reason she could not do that is because she has limitations to be able to exist is me forgetting that God is not a living being and it's actually an inanimate system that just works. And that looking through the lens of being omnipotent, knowing everything and remembering everything, is beyond the scope of the system that I would be discussing with her. I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's it. Right? And as always, think more than you procrastinate, do more than you think, and be more than what you do. See ya.